Mm-hmm.
Okay. So the sermon that you interpreted at church, okay, let me just get to my thing, sorry.
No, you're good.
Okay, so just kind of like an environmental demand of, and I can't believe I haven't even gone observed, because that's like that's my church that I've been going to since 2011. It's just been crazy. But anyway, so do they, I know you guys are in your separate room. Do you guys all wear masks? I know you don't while you're interpreting, but do they have to wear masks when they stay in there, or do they just sit 6 feet apart? And
So most of the time they show up and they have masks on. We have a separate room. So we go in, and I think that they said up to like 45 people can be in the room. That was before we had masks. So now it's like way less. And I think of the population that goes in, there's only about 5 that come in that are deaf consumers. And usually they have their masks on. And then when they chat, sometimes they'll bring it down to like enunciate a word or just like add whatever, or they'll ask like, oh, do you mind bringing your mask down? And then I'll bring my mask down and do the word, and then I'll put it back up. So that's kind of how we've been doing it.
Okay, cool. So do you, if they're wearing their mask, like when they're just watching you interpret during the sermon, do they, or is it, and if they do, is it hard to have like back channeling cues and understand if they're understanding? Like I know you can see their eyes and facial expressions, but and like head nodding, but is that like a demand that comes up that it makes it difficult to see if they're understanding the message? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So you kind of just have to, what do you do in that situation? Just kind of focus on the other back channeling, like head nods and facial expressions. And
really what I do is kind of hold on as much as possible and try, and I'll scan and see every person. So it's not just the 5 deaf consumers that show up. It's also, at least in that instance, there was also a team that I was interpreting with, which was great. And then there was Margie, and she's really good at offering feedback sometimes too, where she'll like keep your head if something didn't make sense, or she'll kind of like, and then write a note, because we'll talk about it afterward, and she always gives me feedback and says, this worked, this didn't, this was clear, this was not, and we kind of go through it like that. So that's our proofread.
Okay, yeah, cool. And then let me see real quick. So I noticed the TV was up on the wall, like higher. So is that why you guys decided to do a stool, or is that just what was there? So you were sitting on a stool with a high table, and then like a lamp, and then it was a computer screen like facing the wall.
Yeah, so we played with it. So one weekend we did the stool, one weekend we didn't. And we kind of, one weekend we had the lamp and the stool, one weekend we had nothing. So we kind of played with it back and forth to see what worked best. One of the things we had to keep in mind is that not only did we have 5 people in person, but at that time we also had 2 people on Zoom.
Okay, cool.
So that was another demand too, making sure that not only could the people that were there physically see us, but also the 2 people that have a very finite area that they can see could see the interpretation. And so we had to play with clothes then too, because the background is really dark. And so I couldn't wear any black, and I love wearing black. So I had to find like grays and blues and other things that would contrast with the black background, so that I didn't just merge into it and become like this homogenized wall.
Yeah. Cool. Okay, cool. Did you so how was the Zoom set up? Did someone else had a device, or was it that you're using that?
So there was a computer screen that was off to my left, and it sat just kind of angled so that it would come at me from the side on the left hand side.
Yep.
And that tended to be pretty good too, because if you get an angle on it, then you can kind of show the role shifting and it adds dimension. Because otherwise, if you're facing it, the 2D kind of takes away from your use of space a little bit.
Yep. Cool. Okay. So I noticed there's a lot of comparisons. Well, I guess I think that was awesome because there's so many comparisons and you did well overall, like, I mean, the whole thing was amazing. I just love watching you because I interpreted for that church for 2 years and it's so hard because I don't know, did you meet with them? I know they meet afterward and socialize because I know Margie had struggled in the past and it was easy for me because I obviously PSE and C is like much easier, but I'm trying to go towards ASL because that's what they're teaching in school and like that's what I want to learn. But I know that like Charles and Ray and Dixie, they really want word for word. Is that something that they, and I know, I mean, this is just my observations from you from school and just from our meetings. Was that hard to, did you know that their target language is more English based or?
Yeah, so I was actually kind of lucky because when I came in, the first day I came in technically to observe, but the woman that was interpreting at the time was hard of hearing and they had a problem with the technology and it wasn't working. So the audio wasn't very loud. So she did not have access to it because she's hard of hearing. Okay. So I offered to go up there and just interpret. So I did whatever I'm most comfortable with. Yeah. And when I went up there and just interpreted, they didn't tell me what they preferred. They didn't do anything. They just kind of watched me and they kind of got a feel for what I interpret like. When I was done, I came down and they were like, great. So where are you from? Because you interpret things really strangely. And I was like, oh, I grew up in Wisconsin. So yeah. It's a little different. My signing's a little different. Which one of the people that's there, he's from Wisconsin too. So it was kind of just like, oh yeah, we get each other.
Right.
Yep.
He's actually my tutor. So I meet with him every week.
He's amazing. He's absolutely, and he's like ASL.
Yeah. He loves your interpretations. He's told me like he really likes you. So
yeah, I mean, we're fans of each other. So I want to be like him when I grow up. So they basically were just like, oh, okay, this is how you interpret. Hi, dog. They were basically like, oh, this is how you interpret. And I said, yep, are we good? And they were like, yep, go ahead, have fun. And so I kind of just kept showing up and they were happy with it, I guess. What are you doing?
Have you ever interpreted church before?
Yeah. So when I was going to school, I went to school in Westminster. I went to FRCC and before I even went to FRCC to be an interpreter, when I was going to CU Boulder to get my bachelor's degree, I went to a Baptist church that's in Boulder, and they have an interpreting program where they train you to interpret for church. And I went and observed them a few times. I chatted with them at length, and they were one of my main starting points. Cool. I am a really big fan of theology. So I am not a Christian myself, but I do study every kind of religion I can get my hands on. I have several religious texts in my home. I'm just a really big fan of it. I think people's relationship with what they view as divine is infinitely beautiful, and everybody should have access to it. So when I contacted them, because I think you had shared it with the group, I contacted and Margie asked very specifically, are you a Christian? Do you believe in all of this? And I was like, you know what? I'm not, but it doesn't mean that I don't respect what you're saying. And it doesn't mean that I don't absolutely love the message and the fact that you have people that are trying to just love each other and be good people. So that's what I can offer. And that's what I have. And she was like, okay, well, we can work on everything else afterward. And I was like, great. And so she's been mentoring me with religious stuff because she's absolutely amazingly phenomenally knowledgeable. She's so great at it and she's been doing it forever. And then my team is also really knowledgeable as well. She works in Thompson. Her name's Dana,
Mhm.
and she interpreted for, I think she's been interpreting for like 10 or 15 years, I think. So she's really experienced as well. So I had two incredibly experienced people, plus feedback from Greg, feedback from Charlie, feedback. So I kind of just had, it was pretty good. And sometimes too, actually, to answer your first question, they would take their masks down
Mhm.
and they kind of just do a quick clarification, and then I'd be like, yeah, that, and then they'd put it back up. So
Okay.
that was helpful too.
Cool.
But yeah, before this, I had not seriously done a lot of church interpreting,
Mhm.
but this kind of got me more into it, and
Yeah.
they're a great group to work with.
Yeah, awesome. Okay, and then lastly, I just wanted to, it's more of a comment, but maybe you can tell me. So like, the whole sermon is somewhat serious, but he's telling stories and he's, referencing verses or whatever from the Bible. And then at the end, you can kind of tell, like when the music starts and he kind of gets like his tone of voice, like he's kind of getting the more sentimental, like part of the message. And it was so amazing because that's my favorite part of the message anyway, just when I go to church. And especially when Steve speaks. And you could just tell, like I have like the marker, the time marker, whatever, like where you switched into that mode and you're just like slower and like more emphasis on stuff, and just your whole body tone and posture and facial expressions just matched what he, like how he was saying it. Like you could tell the difference of like when he went from that into that. Does that make sense? It's so hard to explain.
Affect.
Yeah, affect.
Yeah, so I actually have a background in vocal performance. So I'm a singer. I grew up and went to a performing arts high school.
Okay.
Actually Denver School of the Arts. It was kind of like Fame, but for like Denver. It was very, very interesting. So when I was going to school, I was actually classically trained to perform opera, musical theater, jazz, and I did some other offshoots, several different languages, did a lot of stuff. But the number one thing I always was told growing up was that my face is the most active part of me when I sing. And other people that were my age did not have this. Like my emotions, even when I was messing up the notes, I still had very real emotion in my face. And that was the compliment I always got growing up. So it was something that I had inherently in me. And it's, for some reason, it translated perfectly to ASL, because when I started doing ASL, again, even when I kind of fumble the words or I'm kind of like all over the place in my head, my face still stays really engaged. And that's like 100% performing. It's 100% like trying to channel whatever I'm hearing and put it into the message. And it's affect is like the only thing I do well, even when I'm having a really terrible day. So it's my saving
That's
one.
so awesome. Yeah, I just wanted to comment on that because it was really cool.
I
Okay.
appreciate it. Do you have anything I could have done differently?
I'm just gonna go through my notes really quick, so just give me 1 minute. I'm just gonna ask you some quick questions as I go through this list. How long have you been at in K-12 or PSD?
This is my 5th year interpreting K-12, but my 2nd year at PSD.
Cool. Where were you at before?
So first I was with Jeffco, and then I was with BVSD for 2 years. And so these 2 years have been with PSD. So two. Yep.
Cool. Okay, sorry. I have so many notes, so much to talk about. I'm just trying to find the good things. the main things I wanted to ask you. Oh, so I know it was a while ago, but he talked about dignity. How would you, and I noticed that you spelled it, which was good because I think he was like saying the word dignity. How would you, I know you kind of need the sentence too, but how would you explain or expand on dignity?
Usually when I expand dignity, I'll do something like pride or like how I do like if I think dignity, I always think like an upstanding person, a person who shows a certain amount of decorum. So like fancy or pride or something like that.
Cool. Or like self-respect, because I just looked up the definition, like just to see.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I was thinking and it's funny because I know Steve Carter talks about social media a lot and it drives me nuts, but I'm like, who cares about social media? Like, I don't have it. Like, let's not talk about that. Anyway, so like, I can't remember what you did exactly. I think you did social media or something like that. And yeah. And then maybe I thought about this. I don't know if it fit that context, but like just showing, because he's talking about people communicating and being annoying, and maybe like show the screen and like visually show like them typing and like the chat boxes. You know what I'm saying? To give it like some more visual.
Commenting.
Yeah, like the commenting. Yeah. So that was cool.
Fantastic.
Oh, I heard in the background, Margie's little granddaughter Gracie. She was like not crying but talking because I know she always comes. And I noticed that you just like ignored it, right? So that's always good because sometimes I get like sidetracked.
She's so cute too.
I know, she's so cute. So how did you make the decision to spell things versus sign them? Like for example, we talked about dwelling, like Hebrew. I noticed sometimes you would sign it and sometimes you would spell it. Is it kind of just in the context? I know when he said, like, I'm talking about the word, like he would say the word, you would more so spell it in that situation.
Yeah, he likes to do the root of words or the history of where they came from. So since I know that, and since I actually get the chance to watch the sermon the night before, I take notes and I prep. But that doesn't always work out really well because sometimes I'll predict and I'll be wrong. Other times he'll switch it up and add something there wasn't last night and then drop something that there was last night. So then I'm like, whoa, wait, hold on.
Yeah.
What do we do? So some of them I picked to fingerspell because I try to emphasize and I try to challenge myself to fingerspell things if they need to be as much as possible. But secondly, like words like grace, I didn't have the sign for when I started interpreting at this church. I didn't have to sign grace. I didn't know that was the sign.
Is the grace or no? That's gospel.
Grace. Yeah, it was grace. It's like grace.
Okay.
Something like that. Yeah.
No, that's glory. Yeah. Cool. Yeah, and it's funny because Carl, neither one of them gives you a lot of notes the night before, but watching it, and they don't stick straight to a script, so it makes sense.
Yeah. So it's like coming down from the sun. Grace.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And even Steve Carter in that one specifically, he's like, I changed my message from last night because I just feel like da, da, da. I'm like, of course. So yeah, that's you have to, that's real life. And then so what about, and this kind of wasn't really the situation here. Like I know Paul has a sign name in Peter, but he talks about Nicodemus. And I mean, all your finger spells were like on point. And I don't think he did this in this situation, but if he was like referring to him over and over again, would you make up a sign name for him at the beginning or would you set them up in space, or would you, no?
I never make sign names for
Okay.
anyone ever. If I'm given a sign name, I use it and I'll follow whatever their preference is, but I set things up really specifically so I never have sign names. So what I do is I super emphasize it the first time,
Okay.
and then after that, I just like,
Yeah.
and
Okay.
and then I keep going because they know I've already spelled Nicodemus. It's gonna be Nicodemus again and again and again and again and again. And unless they give me a sign for it, they just know, oh, that's Nicodemus. It starts with an N, ends with an S. We're good.
Yeah. Cool. I love that. And sorry, last question. And this is just like for me because I'm struggling to drop the form of English and expand because I have great ideas if I could like pause and like think in my head and expand. Like I know what I need to do. It's just I never have time, and I try to increase my processing time so I can give meaning rather than word, 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 word. And I'm just really struggling with that. Do you have any tips of how you were learning that at the beginning?
So the biggest thing that I remember from taking these courses, because when I was in school, I had a teacher who was a CODA, and she was the best teacher I think I ever had. And she and one of the other teachers were like best friends, and they would team together really often. So sometimes they would give us examples. And when we would watch them, I remember like drooling because they were so perfect and so amazing and so whatever. And much the same way that you're telling me that I do well, I'm sure they would think that like, oh, I could have changed this and I could have changed this and I probably messed something up and I would have done better. Because that's the way you are with yourself. You never get to see that like positive, wonderful, amazing, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So one thing that one of them, I don't remember which one because they kind of bled together after a little bit into this homogenous, perfect interpreter, but when you're in school and you're interpreting and you're doing any of your videos, that's the time among all times that it is the most safe to mess up.
Mm-hmm.
It does not matter at all. No one misses the message, nothing goes amiss. The only difference is that you can then write down, oh, I dropped this. And that's the only thing that really suffers there. So when I was in school, as soon as they told me that, I was like, oh, I'm free.
Mm-hmm.
So I just did as much as I could. And when I did that, I learned to kind of scaffold.
Yeah.
And build up to the most important details. Is the fact that he's going off into a side tangent, are all the names in that side tangent important? Or is just what he's saying about the side tangent important? Like I used to live in this state, I went to this school, I watched this thing and oh, it was so funny. And then you get that instead of this woman named and then it was really funny. It's just it's different. It depends on what you latch onto. So things like names, dates, locations, very specific kind of surface information is not as critical to keep initially. Initially, you have to hold on to the story has a beginning, middle, and end. These are the things that happen, and you have to finish your sentence, and that's it. And so I focused really hard on just getting this is what happened, and then period. And then if I forgot something, then when I would go back and look at it again, I would say, oh, I would have added her name here. I would have added the area they were in here. I would have added this other weird detail, this side comment he had that took 2 seconds, but I couldn't catch it because it just didn't work. So it kind of, you build up, you get the story, and then you get the details, and then you get the whole thing all wrapped up into a pretty bow. And it doesn't always work, and it's not always perfect, but sometimes if you start real basic, you can move up and get very complex as you get more comfortable.
Yeah. Okay. That's awesome. I know we've had, one or two teachers that say this is a safe spot. Like you're not getting graded for this, but most of our teachers are like grade so hard that it's like, I don't want to mess up, and then it's like, we have to have a B to pass every class. And it's just scary as my senior year.
Mine was the same. And what I did, because it helped a lot, is I would actually pick a video, any video ever. Sometimes I'll do the Daily Moth if I want to voice, and sometimes I'll do some random YouTube whatever if I want to just like interpret. Yeah. But I would pick a video and I would warm up with it at the beginning of my day. and just throw out whatever. And sometimes it was terrible. And then other times I would do it and I was like, wow, I'm on top of this. This is good. But
Yeah.
it was not graded. It was not anything.
Yeah.
And I still do that today with some of my friends. I'll record something and then I'll send it to them, and then they'll review it and be like, oh, you could have done this, 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 and this differently, which is actually what I'm doing this year. I'm structuring like a professional development course.
Oh, cool.
And so we're doing that. And if it works this year, we'll do it again next year. So we'll see how it goes.
Awesome. Oh my gosh, there's so much information. I could talk to you for hours. But the other thing is, last thing, is if you are ever interested in tutoring me or know of anybody or any deaf people, I have 3 tutors right now, but they're all deaf and 2 of them are like not as reliable. But anyway, I'm willing to pay for your time. So just think about it. Or if you think of any deaf people or other interpreters, I'm just trying to do whatever I can do to get my skill level up before I'm so scared to take the IPA. I'm going to take it like way later, but still like, so I just know like that's a perfect practice for me, is just interacting with people that know the language.
I'm a huge fan of giving feedback. So if you ever wanted to just send me a video of you interpreting something and get feedback, I'm totally down to do that. Or if you send a video of something and then like, can I see your interpretation? I'm totally down to do that too. I'm a fan of it. I like doing it. Feedback is like the one thing I do really well.
Cool. I love that. Yeah. And anytime you just want to chat, or if you have Marco Polo, like I'm just trying to like express it.
I definitely have Marco Polo. I have Marco Polo, Glide, Duo, a bunch of them.
Okay, cool. Well, I'll email you, maybe get your Marco for that. And like seriously, I'll pay you if you just like Marco me, and I can just watch you sign and like be able to interpret that, because that's really hard for me too, like the visual voicing.
Impressive. Yeah.
And just like whenever you have time, like you could just be doing cooking and just be whatever, you know. So, but I'm willing to pay you for your time. So, or anytime you want to chat, just let me know. Or if you know of anybody, I would love to pay for their time too. So.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, if you ever wanted to go out to coffee and just sign, we can do that too.
Yeah, and I can buy you coffee or lunch or whatever. Okay, thank you so much. You're awesome, and have a good day. And let me know if you ever need anything too. If I can ever help.
Absolutely. Thank you, Lindsay.
Okay, thank you. Have a good night. Bye.
You too. Bye.